Good morning, guys. It is October 26th. We are going to continue with this lawn renovation series that I've been doing for the last couple weeks. We are getting pretty close to letting this lawn go on autopilot and letting it coast into the winter, do its thing, grow deep roots, and then have all of that excess energy from all the nutrients that we've been putting in to really spring up in the spring, get some early green up. I'm expecting for the spring, that's when the Kentucky bluegrass is really going to thrive. Right now it's growing in patches and I can see it. I'm not really expecting too much of it right now because if you know Kentucky bluegrass, it does a little thing called sprout and pout. Let me show you, I'll cut to a part where I show my little test plot up here. It's not really a plot, it's a test pot. We'll call it that, my little test pot of Kentucky bluegrass. It sprouted, we got some good grass coming up, but it's still like tiny little pieces coming up. For the Kentucky bluegrass, I'm not really worried too much of it. I'm expecting it to really thrive in the spring and spread and then really blend with the fescue. This fescue, guys, the GCI blend, amazing. This stuff looks great. It reminds me of the color that I used to have with ryegrass, which I really, really love. This is a dark green color to me. Perception is everything, guys. So I live in the middle Tennessee type area. So I'm looking at the lawns in our area. For the green color that I'm seeing in my yard, it's dark. It's dark for this area. It looks great. I couldn't be happier. Probably if you're up north, you could probably, well, I'm not saying probably, you can get darker green grass because you've got some ryegrass that you can put down that's naturally green. Some of the cultivars that we plant down here, it might be the same cultivar, but we might not be able to achieve the same color as you guys. And that's all about temperature, soil temperatures, and how that grass cultivar handles your area. Was kind of thinking a little bit more about what I was saying about perception is everything, about the grass that you're putting out. If you think about like the age-old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. That's because in the old days, everybody was looking at their neighbors' properties, wondering why their grass was greener than yours, had less weeds. It was always your neighbor's property was always the best. And that's still the goal today. But now our perception has grown exponentially. We're not just looking at our neighbors' properties. We're now looking at properties across YouTube, which can span multiple states and even multiple countries. That becomes really, really hard to compare your property with theirs. There's so many different types of variables that come into play that you might not ever be able to achieve the same results that they got. There's just way too many variables that can affect grass cultivars. And so I really wanted to dig a little bit deeper and maybe explain why that's a thing. So you shouldn't really be comparing your yard to somebody else's yard on YouTube that doesn't live anywhere near you. So let me talk about what are those variables that can happen you can have the same, let's say everybody went and bought Pete's GCI turf type tall fescue. Everybody's got the same blend, but yet somebody down south might not have as dark of a green or have as dense of a turf stand than somebody more in the transition zone or even in the northern area. I'm not saying that's the case, but that could be the case. With it being a fescue, when you're going down past the transition zone, going into the southern areas, those grass cultivars are not going to be as dark as they are in the transition zone or as dark as they are in the northern zone. The more north you go, you usually get more of that darker quality because of all of those variables that we're about to talk about. Of course, I'm going to dive deep into this and try to figure out, why is the grass always greener on the other side? Now that we're comparing Reddit lawns, YouTube lawns, whatever social media you're on and you're following a lawn care enthusiast, you might be comparing those lawns with yours and trying to get the same thing. So keep in mind these things before you really maybe beat yourself up because maybe you didn't get the same results as they did. So here's a couple things you need to consider. Here's the variables: temperature and growth cycles. So cool season grasses like fescue, they thrive in cooler climates. Northern states where temperatures remain mild during much of the year, fescue can maintain a steady rate of photosynthesis without heat stress. So if you're in that northern area, you're not going to have that high humidity, that constant high heat of the sun that's going to add that stress to that cultivar that you have. So what this does is that it results in more chlorophyll production, giving the grass a darker green color. So if you take away that high heat, take away that humidity, and all of those stress points of those fescue, the grass or that cultivar, that particular cultivar that you're putting down, like let's say that GCI turf type tall fescue, it is able to achieve its darkest color, its darkest naturally achieved color without having to put down nitrogen or iron or anything like that. If you're not doing anything, but you have good soil health, it's going to achieve its natural color for that area. If you're not in those areas and you're in a southern, more warmer climate, let's say you're in a more warmer area of the transition zone, it's not going to achieve that same color because you have higher temperatures, you have more humidity, and so that photosynthesis is not going to get to its peak. It's gonna have to produce less chlorophyll, and it's gonna have that appearance of a lighter green than what was in the north. So let's look at the next biggest variable: soil conditions and nutrient availability. So soil composition is going to be different. You're going to have clay soils, you're going to have sandy loams, you're going to have many different things. More in like Tennessee, we're on clay. So we're going to have a lot of compacted areas because that clay wants to go almost into like a rock and not allow the water to penetrate the soil as much. So we have to water a little bit more just to like really kind of saturate that clay and allow the water to go down. Northern soils often have higher organic matter, maybe slightly more acidic, but what that does is it enhances the availability of micronutrients like iron and magnesium. What that does is naturally iron and magnesium is going to incorporate that darker, greener color. So down here in the south, we're not going to have as much of those nutrients available to the grass, and so we're not going to be able to achieve that dark green color. Let's go to the next. So we covered temperature and growth cycles and soil conditions with the nutrient availability. The next one, sunlight and intensity and duration. So we've kind of touched on this a little bit. So northern areas, you're not going to get as much intensity from the sunlight compared to us being in like the southern areas. So I'm in Tennessee, that's a southern state, even though we're in the transition zone when it comes to grass cultivars or just grass in general. But this is in a southern area. We're not as southern once you get into Georgia and Mississippi and Florida and all of those. Those are going to be like really warm season. We're at Zoysia and Bermuda, St. Augustine, Bahia, all of those types of grasses are going to thrive a little bit better than Definitely not ryegrass. You could probably do fescue, but it's going to be probably that real lime green color compared to what we could maybe achieve here in the transition zone. So yeah, peak summer months from here. Yes, here in Tennessee, we can get into the hundreds, and we can be in the hundreds for a couple weeks. Didn't seem like we really got that high this year. We did have touching 99, 100, 101 days here, but to me personally, this felt like it was a little bit of a cooler year, and it didn't happen, unless I'm remembering this wrong, but it didn't really happen until end of August when we were about to go into fall. So I was so excited about fall season coming in, and then all of a sudden we had that heat wave come in, and it was just unbearable. I'm not a heat person at all. If it was up to me, I would love to be in a little bit more of a climate zone, but I love the state of Tennessee, so I want to stay here. That's going to affect the amount of chlorophyll that the grass is going to be able to maintain and cause it to not bleach out and go into that like real pale yellow to brown and having to go dormant just to conserve itself. Of course, in the northern zone, when it's cooler, you take away that stress, you take away that humidity that we talked about, and it's going to be able to keep producing that chlorophyll. That chlorophyll is what produces that green color and everything. So anytime you see green anything, that one of the main ingredients of it is chlorophyll. If you're eating any of your green turnip greens, spinach, any leaf, it contains chlorophyll. That's what that green color is. Number 4, humidity and moisture levels. We touched a little bit on humidity, or we've touched it a couple times because it plays a factor in most of these examples. Northern climates tend to have cooler, more consistent humidity levels that are optimal for fescue growth, promoting steady dark green foliage. In the south, that's not so much. Periods of high humidity and high heat can encourage both fungal disease and stress. So we did touch that, but we didn't consider that as one of our main variables. So that is going to naturally cause it to be a lighter color when you have that stress that's going to come into play. The moisture levels. Lower rainfall or inconsistent moisture may contribute to less uniform color. Let me touch on that. Behind me is my renovation that is in week 6 of GCI Turf Type Tall Fescue. That is Pete's blend. Pete's the man. He is the man. So behind me is that, and week 6, it looks really, really good. Why does it look really good? Because I've watered the crap out of this. My wind's about to blow my papers away. I've watered the crap out of this. I've watered this in the beginning 3 times a day. Actually, no, I think I watered it 4 times a day because we were coming out of Hale and seeing no rain in the forecast, and this was still nothing but pretty much dirt with maybe a slight haze of where that Hale had pretty much quickly germinated the grass seeds. So I watered 4 times a day for probably first week. After that, I went to 3 times a day, and I did it for another 2 weeks. After that 3rd week of watering 3 times a day, pretty much doing a heavy watering in the morning, doing kind of a syringe watering in the mid-afternoon, and then another heavy watering at sundown. So after that 3rd week, I cut it down to just 2 times a day, doing that heavy watering in the morning and heavy watering in the evening. So why do you do it at those 2 times? That's when you're going to be able to conserve the most amount of moisture into the soil without the sun coming in and drying it up. So if you're watering when the sun's already rose at 10 o'clock in the morning, then that water moisture is just going to dry up much quicker. Same with in the afternoon at 2 o'clock. That's when the sun is pretty much at its peak, and the heat is at its peak, and then you're going to start coming back down where it's going to start cooling by the time it gets to like 5 o'clock. So for me, before I start work or even earlier that morning, I'm going to water at when the sun's starting to rise. So during the summer, the sun's going to rise a lot earlier. Now in the fall, the sun's rising a little bit later, and so you want to time your watering. So I'm now doing watering at, I think it's 7 in the morning now, and I'm watering for a good about 22 minutes. The last point that we have, genetic expression and stress response. So plants, including fescue, we're just using fescue as our example because that's what the main stand of the cultivar that I've got in the yard, can exhibit slight genetic expression variations depending on environmental conditions, which is known as phenotypic plasticity. In the north, where conditions are ideal, the cultivar expresses genes for darker green colorization. However, in the south, where the grass expresses more stress, it allocates resources differently, potentially reducing the chlorophyll that we mentioned before, the chlorophyll levels to conserve its energy. So I wanted to get that explanation a little bit deeper. So let's explain what that phenotypic, I think I'm saying that right, phenotypic plasticity. It's the ability of an organism to alter its physical traits or phenotype in response to its environment. So that's why we're saying one grass cultivar is going to do one thing in the south, the same grass cultivar is going to do another in the north. And then if you're going further south, and I'm saying south being the transition zone because this is south, but that same cultivar in the further south may not live at all, even though it's the same thing, and it's going to perform different in different areas. And I think most of you know that part, but it's the small things. You can't just think that it's going to get the same color wherever it's going to be planted. So with it being able to change in its environment without any changes to its genetic makeup, this flexibility allows organisms, including plants like fescue, to adapt to varying conditions such as temperature, light, water, availability, or soil compositions by adjusting certain aspect of their growth or physiology. So the key aspects when we're talking about the phenotypic plasticity is environmental influence, this adaptive advantage, the reversibility. So that first one, environmental influences. Unlike genetic changes, which are permanent, phenotypic plasticity, now I'm having a hard time saying that. Phenotypic plasticity involves temporary changes that occur due to environmental factors. For example, a plant might produce more chlorophyll and appear darker and greener in cooler temperatures, but become lighter under intense sunlight or heat stress. So adaptive advantage, this is pretty cool. Adaptability is an advantage in survival, enabling organisms to optimize their growth, reproduction, and survival depending on the specific conditions they face. For example, plants might grow deeper roots in drought-prone environments or increase leaf size in shaded areas to capture more sunlight. So right now we've had no rain for I don't even know how long now. I feel like it's been at least a month. I think the end of Hale was the last rain that we really saw. So we've been in a really, really long drought. I was outside watering my grass, manually watering some areas that I know are having a hard time in the front yard. And I had a landscaper come by and was working on one of the other houses. And he was telling me, like, man, I wish all the homeowners that I, didn't oversee would actually get out and water their grass. He said it's been brutal for him because there's no rain, and people are thinking that all the grass that he's done for overseeding for his job, that they're going to go out and water, but they didn't, and so they're not going to get the same results because there's no rain. They didn't run any sprinklers. They didn't go out and just manually water if they didn't have any irrigation type systems. So he said he's just been brutally beaten up because of this drought, and all of those jobs that he did is just complaining because the grass didn't come up. Is he to blame? No, because I'm pretty sure he told them to water, which he said he did. But that's just the thing with homeowners. They think like, oh, somebody professionally came out and planted the grass seed for me, it's going to come up because it was professionally done. Watering is always a thing that falls on the homeowner. If you've had somebody professionally come out and do it and you spent the money, you better water it, or else you're not going to get your money's worth. So that's one thing. We're in drought right now, so I've been watering like crazy. That's why this is doing as good as it is. It will fill in some of the areas that's still struggling. Most of what you see online, if you're looking at doing a renovations, you're going to see about 6 months that it's going to take to really thicken up and grow in. But I'm already at this point in 6 weeks. So that's because I have watered it like crazy, and I'm a lawn enthusiast. Last point for the phenotypic plasticity, reversibility. In many cases, phenotypic plasticity is reversible. If environmental conditions return to a previous state, the organism may revert to its original phenotype. Pretty cool. For example, a fescue grass cultivar might show darker green leaves in cool northern climates, but appear lighter green when transplanted to a warmer southern region. That's just saying if you literally planted a fescue in cool season area, let's say like you planted it in Illinois, and you dug up that fescue, and during its trip you took care of it, you watered it, you kept it under maybe like sun lamps or something like that, and then you went to go move it to a warmer area, it will lose its color and vice versa. So if you planted it in warmer area, it'll be light green. If it's stressed out, it might be yellow. Dug it up, moved it back to Illinois, it will recover and regain its original genotype, and then get back to its darker green. So I have gone on the NTEP's website, the National Turf Evaluation Program, that's NTEP.org. I've gone on their website today, and I've noticed that they got a new feature, and this is something that I have been wanting for at least maybe 2 years, that I've really started to dig deep into the NTEP's database. So going on there today, you can now filter all of your results by state. You'll see a new section on the side that will say select your state, and I'll put screenshots as I'm kind of talking just to show the examples. So for me, I went on there and I selected the state of Tennessee. After I selected the state of Tennessee, it showed all of the grass types that have been tested in the state of Tennessee. So I believe it was Bermuda and Zoysia for warm season grasses, and cool season grasses it was fescue, and I think Kentucky bluegrass was on there. And so I was able to go into fescue, and now I don't have to go through that entire document and only print out the sheets that was showing the state of Tennessee, and highlight those lines so I don't get mixed up with what might be Iowa or Nebraska or any of those other states, Utah, that was nearby. I can now filter or just see the data from state of Tennessee. So much easier. You can now go there and print out everything you need to know for the state of Tennessee, for grass cultivars, for tall fescue, and really pick the grass types that does best in your lawn and your area. Thank you, NTEP, for adding that feature. This is greatly appreciated, and it will help everybody filter out only the needed information for themselves. Yes, grass is always greener on the other side when we're comparing YouTube lawns, but hopefully the grass is always greener on your side of the lawn compared to your neighbors. Always dominate. This is Mickey Hale from One Hale of the Lawn. Thank you so much for coming to this week's video. I hope you like and subscribe it. Comment what you've done on your renovation, and let's keep this going until we go into winter. See you later. I'll see you next week.